Now, the first group of Indonesians evacuated from Iran have arrived in Jakarta. 11 Indonesians landed on Soekarno-Hatta International Airport on a commercial flight from Istanbul, with a further 85 evacuees experiencing flight delays due to airspace closures in some Middle Eastern countries. The evacuation follows increasing concern over the security of Indonesian citizens in Iran, especially students and migrant workers, as regional tensions continue to escalate.
Kondisi di sana cukup mencekam karena ada serangan dari Israel di beberapa saat dan berhenti beberapa saat dan kadang lanjut karena masyarakat Tehran itu sebagian besar keluar dari Tehran. Mungkin mereka takut karena setiap malam ada serangan di sana. Karena diserang, tapi saya mendengar berita kebanyakan serangan berhasil ditangkis oleh Iron Dome Iran.
Tadi malam ya beberapa gangguan penerbangan, disrupsi terhadap penerbangan internasional karena misalnya tadi malam Qatar ya, telah menutup wilayah udaranya selama.
So for more on the state of things in the region, I am joined by Lieutenant Colonel Maurice Hirsch. He is a former Director of the Military Prosecution for Judea and Samaria, but currently the Director of the Initiative for Palestinian Authorities, Accountability and Reform in the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Also standing by would be Seyed Mostafa, but we'll get to him later. Mr. Hirsch, you're welcome. Thank you very much. Colonel Maurice Hirsch, I beg your pardon. So Colonel, let's start with your assessment of the level of compliance with the ceasefire deal in Israel, especially after President Trump told Israel to call off any further action. What's your assessment?
So I think we have to make it clear that Israel will not breach the ceasefire. Israel did not breach the ceasefire, despite what President Trump said, and all credit to him. He had provided a timeline when Iran had to cease its fire, and thereafter another 6 hours for Israel. Israel acted within its right before the ceasefire came into effect and before Israel was meant to have stopped. The Iranians, on the other hand, fundamentally breached the ceasefire, shooting intentionally rockets, ballistic missiles at Israel after the ceasefire was meant to come into place. But let's not get bogged down possibly with the small details. The truth of the matter is Israel will, as I said, not breach the ceasefire. It's not in our interest. We have no interest in doing that. Iran, on the other hand, has been this rogue state promoting terrorism around the world and will possibly be the first ones to breach the ceasefire, although it has to be taken into account. Iran was basically on its knees begging for this ceasefire, and therefore they maybe have their own incentive to ensure its adherence. It's amazing to hear and to listen to the Iranian propaganda coming out to say that all of the people killed in Iran were civilians. What about Mohammed Bagheri, the head of their armed forces, Hossein Salami, the head of the IRGC, the terrorist group, and we can go on and on and on. They said just a few days ago that at least 215 different military commanders had been eliminated just in the start of this war. So where is that propaganda going? Everyone is suddenly a civilian. That's an amazing Iranian claim that's being made. Whereas on the other hand, all of the Israeli casualties, 28 in number, apart from one soldier who just happened to be at home when he was murdered, all of them were actual civilians, including a 95-year-old Holocaust survivor. Those are the people that Iran were targeting, hospitals and the elderly, whereas Israel was targeting military targets.
Trump's remarks regarding the breach in ceasefire. What are your thoughts on that? He was rather heated, very angry, in short. Do you think that he was within rights to be angry?
I would shy against giving marks to President Trump. He has his own considerations that he needs to take into account, and as we saw even on the build towards the strike in Iran, he was sometimes saying things which were convenient for the circumstance when actually there was an entirely different agenda hiding behind that. When he said it was going to take him 2 weeks to decide whether he would strike Iran, when really we know that the planes were already in the air and ready and poised to strike. So I wouldn't necessarily give marks to President Trump for what he thinks about Israel's adherence or lack of thereof of the ceasefire, but rather take in context his comments as something which possibly he needs to be seen to be saying in order to secure other objectives.
Well, Colonel, Iran's health ministry claims that over 600 people have been killed so far, with thousands injured. There have also been casualties on Israel's part. How do you assess the humanitarian situation now?
So like I said, on Israel's side, we had some 1,300, just over that, casualties, of them 28 fatalities, another 17 people seriously injured. On the Iranian side, the number of military personnel that were struck was very, very high. Senior members of the Iranian both military forces and the IRGC forces, and that's something which was very, very clear. Israel made very, very clear both to the Iranian people and to the Iranian regime that we have no fight with the Iranian people. We are not interested in fighting with the Iranian people. We have no argument with the Iranian people. Our argument is only with the Islamic regime that constantly calls for Israel's destruction and has been striving to create its own nuclear weapons and an extensive ballistic missile program in order to bring about Israel's destruction. That's who we are fighting against, and that's who we directed our strikes against them, to ensure that those responsible for those belligerent comments would be the ones paying the price.
Okay, so finally, let's talk about the objective here. We've heard some Israeli authorities talk of regime change in Iran not being the objective of the war. How sincere do you think this position is?
So I don't think that Israel has any disillusions that we could effect a regime change based only on aerial strikes against military targets and against the nuclear targets. This isn't something which necessarily brings about regime change. We hope that the Iranian people will indeed rise up against this dictatorial leadership that has taken Iran on the worst trajectory in its history, and that there will be that change. I don't think in any way, shape or form that Israel believes that we could have done that simply on the basis of aerial strikes without boots on the ground for an extensive period of time. And our country doesn't have that population in order to devote to that type of a mission. And therefore, I don't think, whilst we would definitely support regime change, I don't think it's something that we put in any way, shape or form as one of our goals for this operation.
Lieutenant Colonel Maurice Hirsch, I want to say thank you very much for being with us this evening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a good evening.
You're welcome.